Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Geezerology 2.0. The three of us went back into the Prime Video library this week to watch In the Heat of the Night. This was a first watch for me, and I believe my two buddies, Bob and Bill, have seen this at least a couple of times in the past. It's a 1967 film by Norman Jewison. It won a few Oscars at the 20th Academy Award. It got Best Picture, it got Best Director, it got Best Actor for Rod Steiger, and it got Best Adapted Screenplay. Now, this is a movie that Bob suggested for us, so we're going to let Bob get us started. Take it away, Bobby.
All right, thank you, Scotty. Yeah, so when I was going through the list of movies available on Amazon, I saw this, and it's one that I haven't seen in quite a while, but I remember it as being pretty impactful. And I decided to pick it because thinking about the times in which that film was made compared to what's going on in this country now. And I think you could make a case that maybe we're backing off from some of the civil rights gains we've made. I thought, let's see if this film stands up as well, today as it did back in 1967. So I have kind of a close feeling to this film because obviously it's set in the Deep South in the town of Sparta, Mississippi. And while I'm not a Southerner, I was born and raised in Southeast Missouri. You could throw a rock and hit Arkansas. So there's definitely a Southern influence down there. And it was an area that is steeped in some racism. For those of you who have not seen this film, the basic plot is it's in the middle of the summer in Sparta, Mississippi. There is a wealthy industrialist and his wife who are in town. He's there because they're planning to build a factory in this town. Well, patrolling one night, a police officer finds the dead body of this industrialist in an alley downtown, and he's been murdered. So the local police start to investigate. The chief of police, played by Rod Steiger, orders the cops to spread out through town to see if there are any strangers. Well, at this same time, Virgil Tibbs, portrayed by Sidney Poitier, is sitting in the train station waiting to catch a train to take him out of town, and he has a layover there because he's come back south to visit his mom. The cop sees him there, takes him into immediate custody because you're black, we don't know you, and takes him in. Virgil's got some money in his wallet, so they immediately assume you're guilty. It's only after a while that Virgil Tibbs shows his badge and says, I'm a homicide detective from Philadelphia. They confirm this. Virgil's captain from back in Philadelphia says, hey, why don't you stay down here and help them with this murder? Of course, the white cops don't want this. So there's the interplay back and forth between the black detective who's got all of this experience investigating crimes, working with a small town racist police force. So we go through several red herrings in the plot until at the end, the crime is solved. It's a great film, I think. The interplay, you have two fantastic actors leading this film. Sidney Poitier was already a big star when this movie came out. He had won an Academy Award in '63 for Lilies of the Field. He was the first Black African American to win a Best Actor Oscar. And in 1967 alone, he had three tremendous films come out: In the Heat of the Night, To Serve with Love, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. So he was already a big star. Rod Steiger had an excellent reputation as a method actor, and portraying the small town police chief, Steiger does just a master class in method acting here. So what carries the film is the interaction between these two characters. As they're learning they start from distrust to maybe trust, and it goes back and forth. So it's a compelling character study between these two. There are some standout moments in this film. There is the wealthiest man in town, like a throwback to the old plantation owner. was opposed to this factory coming. So Virgil Tibbs sees him as a suspect. He goes to this guy's wealthy house. You see a shot of people out in the fields picking cotton. The driveway going up to the house has got the black jockey statue and everything. And Virgil Tibbs is questioning this guy. Things get heated. The wealthy white plantation owner slaps him across the face. Virgil Tibbs immediately slaps him right back, which stuns this guy. And he turns to the police chief and says, "What are you going to do about this?" And the cop's like, "I don't know." And as the scene ends, you see Virgil and the police chief leaving, and this wealthy plantation owner looks like he's going to burst out in tears because it's like, my God, is my world coming to an end? Anyway, very, very topical film for the time, because in 1967, we were only 3 years away from the murder of 3 civil rights workers in Mississippi. They were killed at the hands of the Ku Klux Klan, aided and abetted by local sheriff's officers and police officers. We were just a few years away from the Selma marches. We were just a few years away from all of the violent unrest going down in there. So very topical for the time. I think it still stands well today. So I think it's worth watching again, if for no other reason than to see these 2 master actors, portraying their roles.
Bill, what's your take?
Well, as Bob just finished saying, the performances of Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger are fantastic. It is amazing to watch them engage throughout this movie, and because of the circumstances where Virgil Tibbs is first accused of murder and then subsequently held in both awe and then contempt by Steiger, who realizes that he needs to solve this crime, and he has no experience doing any kind of homicide work. So he really needs Tibbs. And you can see through the movie how their relationship changes. And I think one of the things that's most credible about it is that it doesn't change permanently. There is, kind of a latent contempt on both sides for both the person and the circumstance that they are finding themselves in, but they do have a degree of professionalism, I think, that is really something that lets them override that. And there are some moments, as Bob said, that are really striking, including the slapping one. There's certainly one of the most famous quotes of the movie is where Steiger is asking Tibbs what it is that they call him up north, and Poitier says, "They call me Mr. Tibbs." And when he says that, I mean, I can imagine that these were kind of audience applause lines, really, because of the power that that's conveying, as well as the incident with the slapping is a similar one. The interesting thing to me about the movie is that, the murder, the thing that really kind of sets the gears in motion, is really the least interesting part of the whole thing. It's it's obviously solved eventually, and Virgil Tibbs does, in the end, he does figure it out, and it's brought to a successful conclusion. But even he makes a few mistakes along the way. So it's kind of an interesting setup. The characters and the ones other than Steiger and Poitier are pretty well done. Lee Grant is really quite good as the wife of the murdered industrialist, and she's from Chicago. She insists that Virgil stays on the case, despite she has a clear understanding of the racism inherent in this town, and she asks Steiger, what is this? Who are you people? I mean, she has really no sense of how they can actually be like this when they need help and still, reject it just because the person who's going to potentially help them is Black. So I found it very powerful. It's interesting, as Bob was mentioning, the time frame. I did a little checking, and in 1968, when the Oscars were awarded, it was delayed for 2 days because 2 days previously, Martin Luther King had been assassinated, and it's certainly a movie that for its time was probably quite powerful, and even now it does hold up. It's the question I think a lot of people would have is, how can someone like Poitier still be so volcanically emotionally controlled and not explode even more, because you can see he is clearly in the right most of the time, but you also can appreciate the depth of the racism in this town, the fact that he's pursued half the time by rank and file civilians who just are irritated that he's in town, never mind that he's working to solve a murder that casts the town in a poor light. So great movie. Norman Jewison, I think, directs it pretty well. The cinematography is really good. There's some, it's a little clunky in places, but it's very quickly paced. I mean, it's not a long movie. I think it's an hour and 40 minutes and change, and it's well worth watching. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, it's my turn to be the contrarian.
Why am I not surprised?
I'm going to give it credit because I'm not watching this for the first time in 1967. I'm watching this for the first time in 2025. So that might have a whole lot to do with it, and with why I reacted to it this way. First of all, the murder mystery thing, I mentioned this before when we were talking about Rear Window a couple weeks ago. It's like these Agatha Christie type of murder mysteries, I can't stand them. They bore me. I think they're dumb, and I think they're stupid, and I think this was that. It starts out, let me look at the body because I'm an expert. So he looks at the body and he says, well, he couldn't have done it because he's left-handed. This was done by a right-handed person. It's like, okay. And that right there pretty much took me out of this movie when they started with that kind of stuff. And I know that all of this was just a vehicle to get to what this movie was really all about. Like Bill was saying, the murder mystery was just a secondary part of this movie, and sort of a device to get to where we wanted to go with this movie. But that took me out of it. It just took me. It was so bad. It took me out of it. It's like so I'm sitting there rolling my eyes, going, "Oh my God, I don't want to sit and watch this crap." And a thing where they end up going and talking to the plantation owner because he's a botanist, and they found a little twig in the guy's gas pedal or something, so that led them to him. It's like, come on, these guys are supposed to be detectives. They're not Agatha Christie. They're detectives. They're supposed to be detectives. So that took me out of the movie. So the rest of it, I just found a hard time getting into it, and because of that, and because of the way I was approaching this movie, I think, thinking about it coming back. So when all the interplay between the police chief and between Rod Steiger character and the Sidney Poitier character, which is supposed to be the meat of this movie, when all that was going on, I was just sitting there knowing, and I knew exactly what beats were going to hit, and how this movie was going to end, and they hit those exact beats I knew they were going to hit, and it ended the way I knew it was going to end, where Virgil Tibbs was leaving town, and they look at each other and they smile, and they just have this enormous respect for each other, and then he leaves and everything is done. Nothing to me rang true in this movie. Everything to me just felt like something concocted in a writer's room. And then after it was over, I went and started, looking at the movie and saw that this won for Best Adapted Screenplay. I'm going, okay, I've totally missed this thing, It's like, and I'm not going to sit here and hate on this movie. I mean, I didn't hate it. I just got to the point where I was bored by it, and just mostly because of all the contrivances that in the first 30 minutes of the movie. It just turned me off. I like the Ray Charles songs and the soundtrack. The cinematography was fantastic, all the location cinematography, but that was pretty typical of movies back in the 60s and the 70s was just great location photography. I mean, they did that a lot back in those days. And I loved it. I wish I would still do that kind of stuff today, but they don't. I understand that my reaction to this movie was not necessarily the fault of this movie, and I know that because it has such universal acclaim. It won all these Oscars and everything like that. So I know that my reaction is not typical at all of what happened in this movie, and then you two guys just confirmed that.
I agree with you on the cinematography. This movie was filmed on location in Sparta, Illinois, and I think it ably stands in for rural Mississippi. And they shot in Sparta, Illinois, because the setting is Sparta, Mississippi. So they said, hey, we can go to Sparta, Illinois, and not have to change any signs because everything says Sparta. But there really is a Sparta, Mississippi, and apparently they didn't know that. Plus, I think they were kind of like, maybe we don't want to make this movie in the South in 1967. But yeah, the on-location filming, it's marvelous. There are some holes in the plot, and Bill mentioned that it's pretty fast-paced. I almost think maybe a little too fast-paced, because we jump from plot point to plot point without a lot of explanation about how we got there. Because they are suspecting Virgil Tibbs of this crime, and then suddenly they're chasing a guy across a bridge, and they haul him in and say, oh, he did it because he's got the guy's wallet. And then, Virgil proves he didn't do it. And then suddenly we latch on to another suspect. And so it kind of jumps and jumps and jumps. And then there are the things that I do find contrived. For example, Virgil is driving out in the country, and he's suddenly being chased by a carload of rednecks. They corner him in what appears to be an abandoned factory, and he's got a pipe where he's trying to hold off these guys, and suddenly the police chief shows up and rescues him. It's like, how did we even know he was there? This was before cell phones, before GPS. But wow, okay, I happen to be out in the middle of nowhere and I rescue you. And the same with the climax of the movie. Virgil is doing his investigation, and suddenly all of these rednecks show up again. And it's like, how do you know that he's suddenly there? And the ending, Scott, I didn't find quite as contrived as you did. And yes, we knew that at the end they were going to have some kind of grudging respect for each other. And, the police chief takes Virgil down to the train station in his patrol car, and Virgil's suitcase is in the back seat, and he's reaching for it, and the police chief grabs it instead and is carrying it for him, which is a very symbolic. And then, at the end, the police chief says, well, take care of yourself, and Virgil kind of smiles and nods at him, and then the train takes off. So you're left with the question of, have these two people really, really been altered and changed by this? Or are they both going to go back to their worlds and never interact again? Because Virgil's going back to the big city, the cop's going to stay in the small town. So were they really, really, really changed? Or was this just a brief encounter and now we're going to go back to our old ways?
Well, Bob was talking about method acting. You can tell, Steiger he's one of these classicists. He and Brando were in the same method acting class back in New York City in the dawn of this approach to acting. But he chews gum like a maniac. And he uses the stopping of the chewing of the gum like punctuation, and Scott was mentioning how the using the settings, real settings, and filming on location it was such a big part of the movies breaking free of the kind of the studio system, especially by the 60s and 70s. And the other thing would be the amount of time that is spent with people not saying something, which is something that today's movies just can't seem to tolerate, or the audiences perhaps can't. But there's a lot of a very well-earned, to me, silences where people are thinking, and you can see them thinking or looking, and they're just not talking. But you can feel the tension and the time as it elapses, which is, I guess, after years of being acclimated to, jump cuts and sudden edits and things like this, it seems unnaturally long. It's quite powerful.
There was a wonderful cast of supporting actors here, including the always wonderful Warren Oates. And there's the small town mayor who owns a farm implement store. And I was like, oh man, I've seen that in so many small towns. And there's this, and the police chief, man, his character is so complex, because you get the feeling that he's only the police chief because he's a bully. And, is he out of his league here? And there's a wonderful scene where the mayor is telling him, we need to solve this, because if we don't solve this, we're going to lose this factory. And he's telling him, you got to use Virgil Tibbs. And the mayor says, I know you don't want him, but you need him. Great scene, So I thought a lot of that secondary stuff helped tremendously with the film. I just felt that sometimes they jumped too much without explaining how they got where they were.
Well, I think the enduring impact that it has on me, besides the great performances of the lead characters, is the inherent bias that everyone in the town has. And the thing that strikes me as a kind of a northern liberal, obviously those people, in quotes, are wrong. They're wrong. The way they view things is wrong. The question that always nags at me is, what happens if I were, what happens if I grew up in that area? Would I have I don't know whether the bias against that is something that is capable of being overcome. It's very interesting to me. I mean, I don't think of it because I can, as I said, I think of it as those people, those characters, and obviously there's a whole legacy of pre and post Civil War, through Jim Crow, through the challenges of segregation and all of the issues inherent in the civil rights movement that broke a lot of that stuff down, and then the kind of the camouflaging of racism that still exists in different ways. And it's interesting to me because when it's presented as such a clear-cut case, it's very easy to make the right judgment, is in my opinion, which would be like, those people are wrong. The question is, if you were in that situation, would you be that way? I don't know, and I'm glad I'm left with that suspicion of how I would deal with it, because I think it's something that doesn't come up that often. So that's why it is kind of, like you said, Scott, it is not necessarily timeless in its approach to things, but it is sort of in the background, at least to me. The whole thing about what you do or don't do when you're part of a whole. If everybody in town is not wearing a mask, do you wear a mask because it's the right thing to do, or do you just cross your fingers and don't wear a mask? I don't know. I find it interesting.
Bill, how do you rate this on a 5-star scale?
I would give it a 3.5, tending to 4. So I guess I would give it 3.5.
3.5. That surprises me. I thought you were going to rate it higher.
I think
Well,
Okay.
Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say, I think the thing that holds me back from giving it a 4, this is a crazy thing, is that Sidney Poitier was not nominated for Best Actor as well as Steiger. I mean, I think their performances are equally compelling, and I just found it kind of odd that he wasn't.
That has nothing to do with what you think of the movie.
No.
Okay, so where do you want to go? 3.5? You want to go 3.5? 3.5? Bob?
I would give this a 4, and I would go higher except for the holes in the plot. And I don't know whether that was just a thing of we want to edit this down to make it shorter or what, but I felt that they needed a few more minutes to fill in some of the plot holes. If they had done that, I'd have probably gone a 4.5, but I give it a 4 just based on the performances of Poitier and Steiger.
Okay. I'm going to go 2.5 on it.
Wow.
I'm going 2.5. I didn't hate the movie. I was bored by it because I was taken out of it so early with what I thought was just, 2.5. 2.5, which is the highest rating that I will give to a movie that I did not enjoy. and so I'm giving it a 2.5 solely on the basis that I do understand that it probably played a lot better in 1967 than it does now, at least for a first-time viewer. Okay, so should we decide what we're going to watch next?
Yeah.
Bring it.
Okay, the only person that hasn't chosen this round is Randy the roulette wheel, the real good roulette wheel. So we're going to go there. Okay, Randy, do your stuff. For next week, we're going to watch a movie called Stay from 2005. A psychiatrist attempts to prevent one of his patients from committing suicide while trying to maintain his own grip. Something. Any of you guys heard of this?
No.
Yeah, I haven't either, but it's got a real good score of 73, so it should be pretty decent. So that's what we're going to do. Join us next week, gang, and we'll talk about the movie Stay. Okay, so long.